Welcome to the Porn Reboot podcast, where you get practical tips to gaining control over your porn or sex addiction. We help ambitious men end their out-of-control sexual behavior with pornography, sex, and masturbation so that you can maximize your life, perform at your potential, and remain in control in the driver's seat, which is where you have to be in order to gain or maintain the success you want in life. I'm your host, J.K. Emezi, certified sex and porn addiction recovery coach. Welcome to the episode. Today we're going to talk about self-control and how you can use this as leverage. The definition of my reboot is self-control. And this podcast episode isn't for men who want to feel comforted. If you believe that self-control is about restricting yourself, then you are not going to understand anything that I'm about to talk about. So let me be direct from the start. Self-control is not suppression of anything. It is not play acting, like discipline. It's not performing restraints for an audience that admires the aesthetic of discipline without doing the work. And I say that because discipline porn is so prevalent these days. So many people are demonstrating their discipline with how early they wake up or how perfect their morning routines are. I've been living this life for over 20 years, and there is nothing aesthetic about it. And sometimes I see on YouTube and on Instagram and other social media, people performing this, and it looks so cool. But we're just seeing a very small snippet of what it is supposed to be. It is an internal thing, not an external thing. It's not about having your clothes laid out early in the morning and meditating in the morning and filling out your journal and writing your goals. Those are just things we see. 99% of the work is internal. And the first thing is to recognize that self-control is leverage. At the level that most men who are listening to this operate, all the men around you are talented. They are very talented people everywhere. The game is regulation, and whomever can regulate emotion and impulse the most effectively wins the long game. You will beat out the people who are talented, the people who have more advantages than you, the people who are better looking, who have more money due to luck or whatever their circumstances, regardless of where you come from. And I know that because I come from the gutter. Not occasionally, though. This is not something you can do sometimes. Oh, they're just bursts of motivation. I remember I had a month where I was so in control, where I was so regulated, where I was so self-aware, and I just did most of the things I was supposed to do. You have to do it consistently. Not perfectly, but consistently. Over years and decades. And it's the compounding that determines your outcome. Now, this is where I've noticed a lot of men will disqualify themselves. You've probably done it. You chase intensity, bro. You chase intensity in business. You chase intensity in stimulation. You chase intensity in the kind of distraction that is going to provide you with the best sort of short-term relief from that pressure you feel from operating at a high level. Your problem is, I'll just call it a mechanical problem. It's not even a moral problem or anything like that. See, when you do things with intensity, it makes you volatile. Intensity is not sustainable. So guys show up and say, I want to stay off porn for 30 days. That is going to require intensity. I want to stay off pornography for 90 days. Like, you don't want to watch pornography at all. You want to quit cold turkey. That is intensity. And that is going to bring up volatility. Volatility in your biochemistry, volatility in your nervous system, volatility which will then affect everything in your life. And with that volatility, there's not going to be clarity because you're going to be emotional. You're going to be irritable. You're going to immediately deal with withdrawal symptoms. So you then don't have consistency emotionally. You're focused on the consistency of staying off porn for X number of days. but internally you have no consistency. Here's the thing you cannot scale for my business brothers. You cannot scale volatility safely. Let's say you are an investor. How are you going to scale in a volatile market? Can you do that? You can't. You can't scale a volatile organization. You need stability in order to scale. And you're definitely not going to do that in any of the rooms where big decisions that actually matter get made. You cannot go into those rooms and act and grow or claim to grow from a place of volatility. Artificial dopamine spikes. That increases volatility. That is neurochemistry, brother. Your neurochemistry doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't care about your work ethic. It doesn't care about your quarterly KPIs. If you cannot delay gratification in private, brother, you are going to rationalize your impatience and all the emotions you're feeling in public. You will start noticing, pay attention, that you are justifying rush decisions that you probably should have just sat on for a little bit longer. You'll start noticing that, man, I am tolerating a lot of unnecessary risk because the stimulation of urgency is a substitute for the stimulation that you're not getting in other places. So you'll stop like escalating any pressure in order to feel more engaged in a situation. And you don't even know you're doing it. You're acting crazy. You could wait, but you won't. And this is because of all the things that are happening internally. Now, interestingly enough, I've worked with some successful men who believe that, oh, that's my ambition. That's not your ambition when you're acting crazy. You're absolutely dysregulated and you're dressing it up as like your drive, like I'm very driven. Let me just make it easy for you. Here's what happens when you change your baseline, or rather when you stabilize your baseline. You become a lot more patient. So when you start going for self-control in the right way, your patience increases. And I mean genuine patience, not pretending to be tolerant. Your ability to assess risk is going to sharpen because the impulse that you had internally from going like, I'm going to quit this behavior cold turkey, that impulse is completely distorting your ability to analyze and assess risk. So you become better at assessing risk. Your emotional neutrality, let's just call it, I like to use the word equanimous. Your equanimity becomes much stronger within the conversations where it costs the most to lose it. So let's say you're having problems with your wife due to your behavior. You have to be emotionally neutral in these situations. You will lose a lot if you fuck it up. The same goes for important sales, consulting, and negotiating situations. And then your long-term thinking becomes natural instead of becoming something that you need to put a lot of effort into. See, when you are ending this behavior the wrong way, when I say the wrong way, I mean also whether you're working with the wrong sort of system, then you begin to notice it's difficult to think about your life in the long term because you're no longer getting your short-term hits. So your long-term thinking becomes more natural instead of involving a lot of efforts. This is when you are doing it the right way because your reward system is no longer pulling you towards that short-term hit. You start learning how to delay gratification. Brother, when people say, I'm doing so well, JK, I've been off pornography for 60 days straight. And prior to that, they had been slipping and relapsing all the time. I can tell you one thing that is happening in their life, especially if they're using willpower. They have lost the ability to think in the long term. This is why when you look at all these individuals who talk about semen retention and they talk about nofap and they emphasize being perfect in abstinence, you will always notice that it doesn't seem like they have big lives. And when I say big lives, I literally mean like that they have children or a large family or at the very least a thriving business, nor do you see hints or proof of continuous growth. And this is usually because they are so focused on the day-to-day of actually trying to stay away from this behavior and maintaining the days or the streaks they have of this behavior that they can no longer think in the long term. Their energy is spent trying to stay away from that short-term hit. But when you do it the right way, you stop needing stimuli to feel alive, bro. Can you imagine not needing stimuli to just feel okay? You feel controlled, you feel calm. And when you are calm, my brother, you are dangerous in the right type of way. Okay, let's get honest as men. Most men want power, and fewer men are willing to build the boredom tolerance that power requires. Here's what's important for you to know as we wrap this up. If you don't know how to be bored, if you get absolutely destabilized when you experience boredom, then you are still dependent on stimuli. And men who are dependent on stimuli are very predictable. And predictable men can be beaten. Predictable men will always be the losers in this game. At the top, it is the only competitive vulnerability that actually matters. Being predictable. You cannot be predictable. Now, the way to correct this is not complicated. If I was to simplify it, what you would be doing in, let's say, the first 30 days in the porn reboot system is removing anything that artificially spikes dopamine for you. We would be then stabilizing your baseline. We would then install constraints that make all of these corrections automatic. So instead of using a lot of effort and willpower to do that, we just install a new operating system with new boundaries. That's it. That's all we're doing in the first 30 days for you. Nothing complicated, but there's a way to do it. And there is a system and order to doing those things. So self-control is not about restriction. It is basically insulating yourself strategically against that fucked up version of yourself that makes decisions for the wrong reasons. And that version of yourself has been running the show for a very long time. If you are listening to this and you have already achieved some level of success, then in order for you to keep growing and enter the next level, you have to keep insulating yourself from that other version of yourself. I guarantee you that that version of yourself shows up after a long day at work, when you feel resentful of the responsibilities that you have to take on at home, when you are not hitting your goals and you are having a bad week or a bad month, you have a tendency to exaggerate it and feel that it is worse than it is. All of those things are the other version of yourself taking over. Learning how to insulate it is what happens at porn reboots. And you might be, well, that just sounds like self-improvement, JK. It is self-improvement. I want you to understand that the porn reboot system has never been about pornography. Again, pornography is the symptom. There is just a very specific group of men like you and I, who for some reason, pornography happens to be our go-to drug of choice. It could have been heroin, it could have been alcohol, but for some reason, it just so happens to be pornography. And so this system, this program is designed uniquely for the high-performing, successful man who knows that pornography is the only vice getting in the way of his life. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Porn Reboot podcast. I'll speak to you later on in the week. If you found this episode helpful, here are 4 ways I can help you with your out-of-control sexual behavior for free. The first way is to grab a free copy of my book, Confessions of a Porn Addict, 7 Secrets of Porn-Free Men at elevatedrecovery.org, or visit the link in the description below this episode. The second way is, if you're not sure where to start, but you'd like to learn more about my team and I, if you'd like to spend time with like-minded professionals and business owners who are controlling their behavior, then join our free and confidential group, the Porn Reboot group on Facebook. There's a link to join in the description below this episode. The third way is if you need help right now because you have a burning issue, your behavior with pornography is hurting you mentally or emotionally, you're about to lose your relationship, you want to live up to your potential, be an authentic man, and free yourself from shame, guilt, and underachieving, then click on the link in the description below this episode that says free coaching call. And the fourth way is to leave us a 5-star review if you enjoy this podcast, so that we can reach more men who are struggling in silence and bring back the lessons we learn from coaching them to freedom.